representing about 50.12%. Raila Odinga is at 48% with 1,620,158. That's 48.46%. But if
get some perspective on those numbers that Trevor is talking about, those are from Royal Media Services tallying that we're putting together. So we have so far total just over 9,000 polling stations. That's about 20% of the stations that have so far come in to the public portal. That's at the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Now, if you recall, yesterday at around 4 p.m., the update that was given by the IEBC was that there was about 12,065,803 votes that were cast in total. So if we were even to go by that, that would mean there's about 9 million votes out there that are still waiting to be tallied. So even as we give you these numbers, and Trevor is on that wall, remember, it is still too early to tell. And let's just manage our expectations, all of us as Kenyans. I know we're all excited about, getting the numbers and finding that final tally, but just to note that there's still many votes out there that are yet to be tallied, counted, before we can start to draw conclusions one way or another. So, but keep it here. We continue with that number, 9,000 that we have totaled so far, polling stations. Hopefully more to come as we carry on. But let's get more from what's actually happening on the ground. Surfit?
Indeed, even as we look at those national numbers and the key position, that is the presidential position, we're also curious to find out what is happening on the ground in as far as the other 5 elective seats is concerned. And joining us now from Narok South constituency is Ben Kirui. I don't know what you have for us with regards to how the numbers are looking like when it comes to especially the gubernatorial and the senatorial race in Narok constituency, and also talk to us more about Narok South constituency.
Senate Mopel 1, Towet Kichele 1. Senate election results at polling station Olorian Primary School, polling station 1 of 2. Bete Kemoi 3.
Na shukran sana. Studioni tuko katika eneo bunge la Narok Kusini ambapo mambo yanaonekana kuwa sasa yameanza kuwa ya kasi, manake tulipofika hapa mapema bado foleni ambayo unaona pale ilikuwa imefika kwenye lango kuu, lakini unavyoona tukisonga tu na mpiga picha wangu JMO, unaona kwamba hata wale presiding officers tayari wameanza songa. Awali hapa kulikuwa kumetulia na kile ambacho kilikuwa kinaendelea, lakini sasa hivi kule returning officer ambaye yuko anatangaza zile matokeo ambayo yanatoka kutoka katika maeneo tofauti ama wadi tofauti za eneo bunge hili la Narok Kusini yanaendelea, na kile ambacho naweza sema ni kwamba ni kipute ambacho ni cha karibu mno. Hauwezi baini sasa hivi kwamba ni nani atakayeweza kuchukua ubabe wa eneo hili la Narok Kusini. Manake hadi sasa kati ya vituo 171 ni takriban nusu ya vituo hivyo ambavyo tayari matokeo yake yametangazwa. Kule ambapo tulitoka, ambako ni Narok Kaskazini, ambapo tumekita kambi kutoka jana jioni. Shughuli ni kama hii. Hicho ni kituo ambacho hicho ni eneo bunge ambalo lina vituo vya kupigia kura 190, na tulipotoka kule walikuwa wamehesabu takriban nusu ya matukio hayo. Kwa hivyo tutaweza tukurejea pale, lakini kila ambacho naweza sema tofauti ya Narok Kaskazini na Narok Kusini, katika upande wa Narok Kaskazini kipute kati ya gavana wa sasa ambaye anawania kuwa seneta wa kaunti hii ya Narok, na pia vile yule ambaye ni seneta wa sasa na anataka kuwa seneta kwa mara nyingine, ambaye ni Ledama Olekina. Alikuwa anaonekana kuongoza kidogo dhidi ya Tunai, lakini ukikuja pande hii ya Narok Kusini ni kwamba ni kipute tu ambacho tunasema kwa kimombo neck and neck. Manake ukisikia wadi hii unapata kwamba Ledama Olekina anaongoza. Ukisikiza matokeo ya wadi nyingine unapata kwamba Tunai yuko mbele. Kwa hivyo ni kiputa ambacho bado ni mapema sana kusema kwamba nani ataweza kuchukua ama kuongoza ama kushinda kiti hicho cha useneta. Vile vile kiti cha ugavana baina ya Ntutu wa chama cha UDA pamoja na Moitalel Olekenta. Hauwezi baini kwamba ni nani ataweza kuchukua ushindi wa kwanza, manake bado kunazo pia zile maeneo bunge 6 ama 5 ambazo hatujaweza kuzizuru, lakini niseme tu kwamba kaunti ya Narok ina maeneo bunge 6: Kilgoris, Emurua Dikir, Narok North, Narok South, Narok West na pia vilevile Narok East. Kwa sababu kwa hivyo ni matokeo tu ambayo tunazidi kufuatilia kwa karibu sana. Tutaweza kuzuru maeneo ya Narok East ndio tuweze kujua mambo yako aje katika maeneo hayo, lakini kile ambacho tunaweza sema ni kwamba ni matokeo ambayo labda yataweza kukamilika masaa ya jioni, lakini yule returning officer wa pale kaskazini, pande wa kaskazini, alikuwa anatuambia kwamba ikiwa itakuwa mapema sana, labda itakuwa saa 6 za usiku za leo. So ni kile tu ambacho za kusubiri tuone itakuwa kwa kasi gani, lakini sasa hivi ipo matumaini kwamba tutaweza kujua washindi. Wa viti mbalimbali.
Right, Safin. In fact, in this part of the nation, that's in Wajir, county number 8, 6 constituencies there. 1 constituency, Eldas to be specific, did not vote because of security incidences. Let me take you there and show you live pictures. They are voting right now as we speak. Wajir West, Tarbaj and Eldas. Eldas itself has a voter population of 23,359. That entire Wajir county has 207. Wajir West has 31,334. There in county number 8 is 207,758. And Yvonne, I'll come back to you and check on the numbers in terms of what IEBC is reporting in terms of the polling stations that have now reported.
PM, and then announce all of them together. I think that's the big conversation now that we wait for. And a quick reminder that the chair of the electoral management body, Wafula Chebukati, did say that he would be making the final declaration of the presidential result during the day. Yeah, in terms of polling stations, because without Eldas is just voting as we speak. Raila Odinga is at 56.73%. That's about 8,838. William Ruto is at 6. IEBC's role to make the final announcements. George Wajakoya is at 71. That represents 0.45% of the total votes. That's in Wajir specifically. Now we could, though, because that was 52,362, but that number we cannot compare it at this particular point because the numbers here are still being tallied. This is based on our numbers so far, but in terms of the general presidential numbers, this is how we're looking like as we speak. And like I mentioned, these numbers keep changing really, really fast. William Ruto is at 1.7 and 1,119, 50% of, actually 50.17% of the votes. Give the final tally and we're actually crossing over there, right? It absolutely is. So anyone can do this, or is free to, but it's definitely a task, and I'm sure there's lots of individuals and indeed also the political camps that are doing their own tallies as well. No doubt they're getting them from their agents who are located at the various polling stations. But speaking of what is happening at the IEBC, let's do a check-in. I think yesterday we had all of 3 major sort of updates from the IEBC. So we're possibly hoping for one. Hopefully this morning, okay, it's already past noon. So hopefully we get one very soon. Ayub Abdikadir is at the Bomas of Kenya. Ayub, good morning, good afternoon. What time are we likely to see an update or hear an update from the commissioners today?
Good afternoon, Yvonne, Trevor Mbija and Safino Cheng from the Communications Center. This is the National Tallying Center of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, and it's where the President of the Republic of Kenya will be declared winner. But before that, there is a clearly stipulated process by the Constitution as to how that comes into effect, and this National Tallying Center is coming to life. Yesterday there wasn't much activity because it was polling day when Kenyans took to the more than 46,229 polling stations across the country. So let's begin with table number 1 here, and just what happens in terms of just clarifications and elaborating for the Kenyan people, educating them as to what happens. Now, this seat is a preserve of the returning officer or returning officers from across the 290 constituencies. You have to add 1 and 291 because there's a returning officer from the diaspora voters who will be exercising their vote. And according to the poll commission, the Kenyan people have come out in countries like the United Kingdom, the United States of America, the United Arab Emirates, and other countries in the East African region. These 2 seats, and in this case they will be the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition political party, is they will be verifying the Form 34S physically. The returning officer here will bring his from the constituency that he represents, and they will be presenting that form which has been substantiated, authenticated, and he will be presenting the same to the national returning officer, who is the returning officer for the presidential election. That is the commission's chairperson, Wafula country, and 1 therefore becoming mathematically 291, because Kenyans have equally voted in the United Arab Emirates, in the United Kingdom, in the United States of America, in Canada, in the United Kingdom, in Burundi, in South Sudan, in Uganda, and largely the East African region, for they are bearers of the sovereign power that the Constitution of Kenya gives them under Article 1, and therefore delegating that power to the next batch of leadership who will be governing over them. 7. Busy as it is today, and we expect tomorrow and thereafter to be even more busier, because the returning for the presidential election will then announce the president-elect of the Republic of Kenya. And then you have to also understand that the commission has a 7-day time frame constitutionally to declare the president, meaning that date falls on the 15th of thing is in order, bearing in mind, and you can vividly, as many Kenyans do, that the Supreme Court in 2017 cited that the commission had committed illegalities and irregularities in the conduction of the presidential election, ordering for a repeat election which happened on the 26th of October 2017, and in which President Uhuru Kenyatta won after the opposition National Super Alliance presidential flag bearer Raila Odinga had boycotted the process then 5 years ago. That is in a nutshell what's happening, and we will be, of course, keeping our viewers updated from the National Tallying Center here at the Bomas of Kenya. So far, no citation of the commissioners, Wafula Chebukati, Professor Abdi Yakub Gulie, Boya Molo, Irene Masit, the Vice Chairperson Juliana Cherera, Francis Wanderi, and others. But we have seen, and the presence of military and diplomatic leverage Kenya enjoys in the region, including the support for the Kenya Defense Forces, and also the United Kingdom, and the High Commissioner who represents the country here, who we had spoken to, and will be catching up with her later in the day or the day after, as observers here are camping, including representatives of political parties, the presidential candidates' family and friends, observers from the European Union and the African Union. And you can recall the EAC, the East African Region Mission, or the Observer Mission, is led by former Tanzanian President Jakaya Kikwete, who was a key ingredient in the 2008 Serena talks, months after the post-election skirmishes that engulfed the country following the disputed presidential poll in 2007, leading to the formation of the Grand Coalition government then, which President Mwai Kibaki the late and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga led, and a tenure expiring in 2013, or expired in 2013. That's so far the latest from here, the National Tallying Center. Yvonne, Trevor and Safin, back to you in studio.
Well, thanks, Ayub. So far, 44,550.
The numbers than I am, but that's about 96% of
Yes,
that.
exactly.
And so just to remind everyone, there's also another procedure that happens at the National Tallying Center, even as these numbers are streaming into that portal that is made publicly available. Remember, the National Returning Officer will also be waiting to receive physically the Forms 34A. And those come from the constituency and county returning officers, who then bring them to Nairobi. And then they do the verification to just make sure that, you know, what physically matches what was sent via the KIMS kits yesterday. And so it is that transmission.
Regional numbers, it's the IEBC that will give the final tally, but our data analysts are crunching those in real time. They're downloading the forms literally and counting. So the numbers you're seeing keep changing really fast. But let's hear this from the ground. Safin is standing by there with
to conclude the tallying. Kindly tell us, how is the progress so far? What do you have for us? Speed with what you have with regards to how you've traversed different constituencies of Kilifi County. What more can you tell us?
Good morning, Yvonne. Indeed, interesting. It's been an interesting turn of events here in Kilifi County. As we speak right now, the tallying process of the tallying of the votes from the various polling stations. There were 1,144 polling stations spread across this county. Is actually going on right here at Pwani University. This is where we do have the main tallying center for the counties. And we did have three. The first instance was we had 5 unsealed ballot boxes coming from Bufa Primary School polling station. And out of the 6 ballot boxes that were brought from that particular polling station, only the presidential ballot box had been sealed. The rest were left open. And the second instance was from Poroshoni Primary School polling station, where we had one and this has actually not gone down well with the agents that are representing the main candidates who are squaring it out in this particular election. The presiding officers who are in charge of that particular process cited some various reasons. One of them saying that they ran out of the straps to seal the boxes, and that is why they decided to. The agents of his agents were actually here, and they demanded to understand as to why that was the position. Some ballot boxes are being brought in that particular manner. But I'm made to understand the IEBC officials and the officers who are here have managed to sort the situation. They had to set aside those contentious ballot clear results, especially with regard to seat. But they are saying that is not the case. And indeed, even the IEBC officials here have not given us a final tally as to how that particular race is going on. So we are still receiving results and votes. Votes are actually coming from the various polling stations. They're still being tallied here. And therefore, we've been assured that by around 4 p.m., we are likely to see where this contest is actually shaping up.
It's Dennis Otieno there with an update from Kilifi County. Around 4 p.m., that's when he says the earliest they're expecting numbers and, of course, an official communication from the officer in charge of the tally boxes that were delivered at the tallying center in the Kilifi North constituency. But according to Dennis, so far that issue has been sorted. The IEBC officials managed to verify those ballot boxes, and they're included in the tallying process. We'll be getting back to him a little bit later to get more details from Kilifi County. And now we take you to another part of the country. Trevor?
Yes, Safin, we're heading straight to Bomet, county number 36. Their voter registered there is 376,985 of them spread across 5 constituencies. Let's bring in Emily Chebet, who's standing by there with the latest. Emily, good afternoon. It's good to see you again. What's the latest from where you are? Emily? All right, we'll get Emily in just a bit, but I was mentioning earlier on that it's 5 different constituencies in Bomet. There's Sotik, there's Chepalungu, there's Bomet East, there's Bomet Central as well, and Konoin. But first, we cross over to Hassan Mugambi, who's standing by in Meru. Hassan, good afternoon as well. I know it's been a crazy night and day for you as well out there. What's the latest from where you are?
Thank you very much. It was freezing, yes, but today the weather has committed to ensuring that we work under some very, very good conditions here. We are currently in Imenti South constituency, where we are at the main Imenti South constituency. South Imenti returning officers are now returning the tally to the constituency election managers, who are actually just receiving them and making that process. It is a very slow process, I must say, across the constituency and across the county, so to speak. And here now with me is Kasim Kaima, who is the returning officer. Thank you very much for agreeing to speak to us, first of all. What is the status?
Kuna ile idadi kubwa ya wale wagombeaji. Kwa mfano MCA niko na 65. MNA niko na 13. Kuna president, kuna hizo zingine, na lazima utangaze kila position ndio umalize ndio fuata nyingine. So kama unavyoona kuna mlolongo mrefu, lakini tuna imani kwamba tutamaliza.
Naam. Na labda kuna maeneo ambayo yalishuhudia kuchelewa lazima la
sheria watu wafunge kituo, walikuwa bado watu kwa mlolongo. So kisheria huruhusiwi kuwafukuza ama kuondoa, lazima waache mpaka wamalize kuvote ndio sasa ufunge kituo.
Vinakuwa venye kurejeshwa shughuli hii kukamilika kikamilifu.
Kukagua pio moja na materials zake huenda kachukua nusu saa, kwa sababu kuna zile materials zinazoita strategic kama KIMS, kuna hizo forms, na lazima tuhakikishe kwamba zimekuwa filled kama vile tunavyotarajia. Kama zina makosa tunawaregesha, wana refill tena, lakini zitakuwa kwa stages kama 3. Ya kwanza ni hizo materials nje,
na hilo linachukua takriban nusu saa hivi.
Kama nusu saa hivi ndio.
Naam.
Kama nusu saa.
Kwa hiyo tunatarajia sasa kwamba tutakuwa hapa kwa muda mrefu na tukue na subra.
Tuwe na subra kwa sababu hakuna shortcut. La makosa.
Na labda ukikamilisha hapa sasa, tunaelekea wapi kwanza kumalizia hapa?
Kumalizia hapa, baada ya clear hawa POs, mimi nita print form zangu B, nitaenda county, nitamtuma DRO county, mimi naelekea kwa chairman Bomas of Kenya, kwa chairman Chabukati, nikatangaza majibu ya urais. DRO ataelekea
nasi. Asante. That is Kasim Kaima, who is the constituency returning officer here, just telling us that patience is what should be employed right now. It takes around 30 minutes to clear one presiding officer from the different constituency polling centers across out of a number of 200 plus that he is saying that he is expecting to see them all. 30 minutes per each returning officer who has come from the different places in this constituency. Remember, just like they were given this material, they are returning them. Everything is going to be signed for both strategic and non-strategic, and that explains why it is taking so long with one person here. And they are all here patiently waiting, and we will be here waiting with them until the last announcement is made before now, like he says, the deputy returning officer will be heading towards towards the county tallying center as he goes towards Nairobi, so that well as the county at large. Remember, we were yesterday at a polling station called Kirogene. People were voting up to midnight because of the failure of the KAMES kit. It locked, and it had to be unlocked later on for those that were already on queue to continue and exercising their democratic right. That is what we have here in Imenti South.
Thank you very much, Hassan Mugambi, for that. Now, before we go to the next one, we just want to give you an update on the next tally, but also just to remind you, we have our guests who are here. They've been patient. We will get to them in a moment because we want to understand what they think about what's been happening over the last 24 hours, and then, of course, 17, maybe now 18, 19 hours since the polling centers closed. We have with us Wanjiru Gikonyo, who's the National Coordinator for the Institute for Social Accountability. Kevin Osido is the CEO for the County Governance Watch. They're here with us. I don't know if you want to get to them or if I should give you this update first on the numbers that we are tallying. So this is what things look like at the moment with the countrywide results for the presidential vote. This is per the Royal Media Services tally. This is per the Royal Media Services tally. How many Forms 34A, Trevor, received by the IEBC?
Yeah, based on the IEBC website, they've received 44,609 out of the 46,229. So just about 1,620 to go. Okay.
Now, out of those that IEBC has received, these numbers that we're giving you from our tallying are from 10,536 polling stations. They're from 10,536 polling stations. This is an update from what had results from 9,000 polling stations. So we, in the last hour or hour and a half, have managed to put together an additional 1,536 polling stations, and the numbers are showing at the bottom of your screen. This represents 22.79% of the polling stations. That's 46,229. So just thought we would give you that update.
So as it stands, Yvonne, based on what IEBC already has, which is 44,660 now, we has submitted all the remaining 900 out of 928. So
also just a reminder that Eldas in Wajir County, the voting there is currently ongoing. Remember, yesterday they were not able to do so. A couple of hitches, including security ones. Today that has been resolved, and so the voters there are currently exercising their mandate. So with that said, I think we have another update before we get to our guests in just a moment, and we really thank them for their patience. They're also here following the numbers. We'll get their perspective on where things stand right now. We'll get to them in a moment, but first, Surfin has an update for us.
Indeed, and we will be delivering those numbers to you as soon as we receive them. And talking about numbers, we want to take you to Bomet County, a county that registered a total number of 376,985 people across the 853 polling stations, an increase from what was, what was recorded in 2017 that stood at 322,012 registered voters across 728 polling stations.
From ballot boxes, they're sealed to ensure security and safety. So once you're here, you come and read. It is low. Those are the votes that we're waiting for to count at the end of the whole process. And you can look at it, Safin, the process is ongoing, the registration, the returning officers are seated. Everybody is just waiting eagerly to see what will happen at the end of the process. The observers are here to look at the process. And a few of them that I spoke to earlier actually were saying the process, yes, is a bit slow, but again, they are also comfortable with the process because they want to get the credible and elections. Again, on this other end, you can see that security is good because they are arrived here. And on our screens, we are just looking at a few. And Safin, just to mention, we do not have numbers that we can give our viewers currently because, like I said, here we have only tallied 60 polling stations out of how the process has been. Asante sana. Okay. Naam, tafadhali. Majina.
Majina langu ni Elliot Ng'endo. Mimi ni political parties. Nimekuwa hapa tangu jana.
We are facing slight issues with the sound in Bomet County. We'll be crossing over back to her as soon as possible. But now we also still want to take you to yet another part of the country. We told you we are present in all the 47 counties across different constituencies. So keep it Citizen Television. Trevor.
Thanks, Afin. County number 47, where we are right now, right? 17 constituency. Let's cross over to Gatete Njoroge, who's standing by in Embakasi East Aviation School. Gatete, good afternoon. It's good to see you. What's the latest from where you are?
Polling station waiting for the process, but it's going to take a bit of time. We have seen long queues out there, the presiding officers waiting in the queue to basically waiting in the queue so that their documents, their votes are tallied and every vote is validated, and to make sure that everything is okay. Then from there they appear before the returning officer, who has to once validated, and then the announcement will be made on
Mombasa. Looking at Kakamega, I think there'll be a need to see, did those last-minute announcements suppress the vote in any way? Because when you have a vote that is this close, then each and every ballot counts. Of course, some of the other teams' kits failed. Looking at the process, of course, we know the ballot papers were delayed slightly because of the court rulings, and that could factor in. All in all, I think the IEBC has done its job. I think my second reflection would be the lower than expected voter turnout. It's not terribly low, but it's not where it should be. And I was checking, looking at 2013, we had 86% voter turnout. 2017, 79.5% voter turnout. Now we are looking at 61%, in particularly, has broken many barriers. A very strong economic platform. Azimio also has a strong economic platform, but UDA has framed theirs in a particularly impressive way. They've been very strategic, targeting specific segments, really doing a marketing approach, a message for everyone. But despite that, and despite their very impressive mobilization, they actually have a manifesto that was consultative. This is something we champion as civil society. But despite that, you have 40% of the voters who decided not to show up. They were not convinced by Azimio. And we can, really conclude or imagine that is because of the handshake and the Uhuru Kenyatta lurking in the background with the state capture issues and how that has affected their businesses. But they were also not convinced by this very progressive economic manifesto. And also the youth did not register. They were also not convinced, despite this real onslaught. This means that there's a large number of Kenyans who are still not convinced about the accountability of their leaders, and they have expressed themselves by not participating. This is a major issue because whoever wins will govern for all. They'll not govern for their winners. They will govern for all, and legitimacy comes in addressing what is missing. And to my mind, it is the leadership integrity. It's the political accountability of our leaders. The promises are great, but we are done with promises. And I think young people and those voters who didn't turn out are saying, enough of promises. We need accountability.
Okay, and that's happening on a national scale. And maybe as the days go on, we will question whether part of the reason for that lower than expected voter turnout is the issue of, incumbency that, for all intents and purposes, sort of existed on both sides of the two big political formations. So you have Wanjiru on, voter sentiment, particularly with the national vote. I wonder what the voter sentiment is, at the local levels. You're working with the counties, Kevin. What is the state of the race in terms of voter sentiment at those levels? Because those are equally important in terms of, governance.
One thing that is quite impressive at the county and against the historical hotspots or zones of the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, there are candidates who people just thought about in terms of looking at what can you deliver, what have you done, as opposed to the political parties, which is partly why the narrative around the six-piece voting system was being propelled and profiled within the campaigns as it were. But again, looking at what that both sides of the coalitions were looking at, so much so that from Azimio la Umoja, it's about the 6,000 shillings. And then what does that mean for county governments and governors who are going to be administering the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Alliance manifesto at the county level? On the other side of it, of course, is a question of devolution and the bottom up, and how then you marry or merge the gaps or the convergence point between bottom up and the narrative that UDA or Kenya Kwanza had against the budget process, for example, or how devolution is being done in Kenya. So the citizens at the county level went beyond in my view, the expectations, and much more fundamentally, even including the opinion pollsters, because if you look at certain narratives that were painted across the country around which governors had upper hands, or which members of National Assembly, or which kind of MCAs had upper hands in certain counties against the provisional results that we are currently seeing, you can tell that the voters were not so much interested in what the pollsters were saying. They were looking at the individual against your profile in terms of service delivery, and what that means will necessarily and automatically reflect on what's happening at the national level. But yes, there are provisional results, and we look forward to seeing what kind of data IEBC is going to be sharing with the nation.
Yeah. Can I add to that?
Yes, Wendy.
Just to say that and I totally agree with Kevin, and one thing that UDA appears to have gotten right is allowing, or rather Kenya Kwanza appears to have gotten right, is allowing its members to battle it out at the local election level, as opposed to pushing out any other candidates. Whereas we've seen with some of the ODM spots, some of the, for instance, the result in Homa Bay, or what has emerged from Homa Bay, you look and say some of the strongholds, you don't expect to see a contestation around the anointeds. Also in Nairobi, the contestation we are seeing at the gubernatorial level. This Nairobi is traditionally quite a stronghold for Azimio, for Raila, but they may have gotten it wrong in not allowing a free nomination process and done a poll. But even though some of the polls are leaders, the issue that Yvonne mentioned, that we are really voting for the status quo that has refashioned itself, and we don't like what the state. There were questions around the procurement process. So this calls into the legitimacy of the electoral process. These are historical issues. You've got in fact, as benefiting from, there was a very, some of what was coming out in the media of voters, and they say, well, so that means if I vote, it's not going to make a difference. And you've heard the youth saying that a lot. So the electoral process and the lack of accountability. But we also saw that Chapter 6 was essentially swept under the carpet. The EACC listed 241 ineligible leaders, and only 6 of those were disqualified for very many reasons. So voters then will sit there and say, well, I'm not interested in wash. I'm not interested in people who've been stealing public money. What am I going to do? So this has been a very conflicted election, very paradoxical, in that the economic agenda on both sides, by the way, not just UDA, Azimio also has a great economic agenda. They are focusing on agriculture. They are saying we want to link agriculture, small-scale farmers. We want to ensure that the informal sector is linked into this. It links into manufacturing. It links into the regional market, so that you create opportunities, you build business, really create the economy. And of course, the UDA also have a very strong economic agenda. But despite that, what I think voters are saying is, we don't trust you guys. And I think this election calls for a reflection on what have we missed. There's a step we missed. It's not enough to say, forget about the last 10 years of abject corruption, a trillion shillings possibly lost every year due to corruption. It's not enough to say, forget that. We've got a new fancy message for you. we have to go back to where did we go wrong? How did we enact a constitution and then have a regime undertake the largest and most, kind of happen? Does it mean our constitution is wrong? Does it mean our process was wrong? So we need to go back to a genuine conversation. Otherwise, we are taking part in administrative processes and we are losing the people, particularly the youth.
Yeah, and Kevin, there seems to be some kind of nonchalance when it comes to the youth in terms of taking part in this election. In fact, Yvonne was talking about it yesterday. Yeah. Even when the IEBC was looking to register voters, they missed the mark by a mile. But we could still see them attending rallies and all that. Yeah. So what did Kenyans miss at this particular point that made them feel that only when there's remuneration, alleged remuneration, then they show up? But when it's a civic duty, nobody cares.
Largely, the response to that probably would be looking at government performance. And if you look at what the interesting perspectives from what a young person in the Republic of Kenya would be looking for from government, the answer would be probably either a job or an opportunity, and how the government responded to COVID-19 against the mega response to either with COVID-19. But largely, if you ask young people out there, what is it that would make you wake up early in the morning to go and vote for a government? They will tell you it's an opportunity to get a job, or including the president and his deputy. They have not been able, where somebody says, we promised you stadia, the other one will ask you, where are they? Somebody says, we said we'd give you 500,000 jobs every year. The other party would ask, where are those jobs? And then there's never a response. So young people are looking at this and they're saying, where is this solution? Of course, Trevor, you know that out of the numbers that you're mentioning, out of the 22.1 million registered voters as at February this year, there were about 39% from 2017. So within the 5 years, there is a trend, as Wanjiru said, that as not so serious about responding to that youth question. Over time, we will see this apathy, this kind of disinterest, even in not just elections, but even in accountability and aspects that make citizens want to participate, even in governance issues. Public participation, we'll be seeing elderly, because in this election, if you look at the numbers, 39.54 against 22 million, and then you have a turnout of about 12 million. It means that 8.8, almost 9 million young people slept. They never woke up to go and vote. And that's partly why, from statistics and what we see already, the elders were even being carried by the same young people and being, of governance and leadership. And if we don't do something to excite these young people, amidst all the promises by government, affirmative action funds, Kazi Mtaani was brought back by the president just ahead, about 3 months to the election, to more or less try and seal off young people from being used by political parties, and also to help them see that government is responding to the need of them putting some money into their pockets. But that never responded to the question around why would young people be interested. So overall, we have to, as a country, we have to get back and ask ourselves, how will we be able to make the almost 50 out of the 54 million Kenyans to be excited about leadership, about governance, and even want to run for office? If you look at the statistics right from the gubernatorial level, because we have done a bit of that, the number of young people who vied for those positions beyond the party primaries is not as encouraging. All the way to MCAs. Of course, MCAs are quite a number, but it's given that the area of campaigns, not so many young people would want to go up to the levels beyond MCAs. So this election has given us a number of questions that would help us reflect on as a country in terms of exciting the young people to want to be active participants in leadership and governance issues.
Yeah. Wanjiru, is that something that will change the trajectory that we seem to be shooting in the dark here around? Because you see, would you say that there's no options? Because in this election, there were the leaders that some may perceive that have been there for long. There's literally a man of cloth there. Yeah. So what are they looking for?
Yeah, yes, what are the voters looking for? Well, I'll answer, maybe just pick up something that came to my mind when you were talking about the size of the campaigns, the money spent, versus the voter turnout. And the word reparations comes to mind because I was talking to some young people and they said, yes, we'll go to the campaigns, we'll do whatever, some get social media jobs and they'll mobilize, and they say that's our reparations because this is our money. Yeah. These people haven't given us work, but it doesn't mean I'll vote for them. It doesn't mean I'll vote at all. So unfortunately, that transactional politics is, or maybe we could say that transactional politics is not working. And the political leaders may also now come to recognize their ability to buy the vote is falling, is diminishing, that's a loss-making enterprise. But what are young people looking for? I think this is not an easy question to answer, but I do think we missed a step. The Agenda 4 was about dealing with historical issues. And, you know, those had to do with land, those had to do with human rights violations and other forms of injustice. When we enacted the Constitution, we forgot the Agenda 4. The Truth and Justice Commission report, the Dungu Land Commission report was set aside because the administration of Jubilee, and you know, these are the paradoxes, had no interest in implementing that agenda. Food on the table. Yeah. Families are living on 1 meal a day. You've seen eviction, conflict of interest, state capture, a massive drought. So these are the realities. So the messaging of government is so disconnected from the reality of people and the violations this administration has really wrought on the people, that we need we need to speak to that. Because government must serve the people. This government takes a lot, very heavy taxation on the people, but it gives very little. And it continues to violate, you know, the most vulnerable, and even the middle and professional class and small businesses have been ravaged. Yeah. So yes, we need to deal with the historical issues. We need to deal with the new crimes, the state captures, the corruptions, political leaders who become rich just because they get into office. So we need to deal with that. But I'll also just say on a positive note, we are very encouraged by the regulations, the recent directive of the SRC on members of parliament who will no longer be able to draw. I think there's been a cap on their sitting allowances and their other forms of allowances. Yes. They are being told, yes, and then also we had the ruling on CDF. Yeah. So through the court system and through the courage and, you know, proper functioning of the commissions, we are beginning to contain the, you know, political excesses of our leaders and to begin to deal with that. So we need more of that. And yes, it's not easy, but it's something we must do.
Yeah, and you know, that is the ideal and that is what we hope for. But for now, we have to deal with, first of all, getting to that point. So I want to take us back a little bit to IEBC and, you know, what is happening now. I mean, I think a lot of what's happening with respect to the results and how those are being transmitted and indeed announced are significantly different from 2017. In 2017, we had the nice big board at the Bomas of Kenya. There were numbers that were coming in. Actual numbers. Now, you know, all we've got is the number of Forms 34A that have been received. What's your sense with what IEBC, particularly the chair, has to do now in terms of also managing the expectations of Kenyans? You know, everyone is able to, well, can do their own tallying if they want to. But, you know, we're all just waiting with bated breath. So I want us to just sort of focus on that for a moment and see what Wafula Chebukati should do. Of course, all eyes on him and the entire commission. They have 7 days to announce the result, but, you know, obviously...
Should they take all the 7 days?
Should they take all the 7 days is the question.
Yeah. I think one of the things that IEBC has not done very well, of course, it came as a late thought, based on a lot of advocacy and a push for IEBC to communicate, is public engagement. Initially, IEBC was extremely closed. Nobody probably would have known what's happening with it. Has to do, and